Good afternoon, everybody. The DG has advised that we start on time, so we're starting on the dot. 2:30 exactly, as the computer says. Today is a very special day. It's a very special day and a very special year. As we actually have 2014 as the year of gender at ICRISAT. And today is the launching of the ICRISAT Gender Forum, which is an activity that happens every month, across all regions. We start here in Asia, and it will be hosted month after month in alternate locations in Eastern and Southern Africa, as well as Western Central Africa. So I welcome you all to this launching of the ICRISAT Gender Forum. With the innovative thinking of our DG, one fine MG afternoon, he said, let us have the commencement of the ICRISAT Gender Forum. And I thought it was just a one-day affair, but he was serious. He says it will be a monthly affair. And with this providing a space for interacting across regions on implementing the gender research at ICRISAT, we now formally launch the ICRISAT Gender Forum with our own DG launching it formally. Now, this inauguration of the first session with a release, it will come with the release of a film. It has been released in an international film festival. It was attended by the community in Hyderabad, but this is a time when, with the help of the Communications Office, of Strategic Marketing and Communications Office led by Joanna, and the initiative of members of the PLS team, primarily Padma, we are releasing the film A Day in the Life. So it's a day in the life of a woman, reflecting the real life experience from the village studies at ICRISAT. And you will see a young girl who is participant when the VLS started in 1975, a documentation of her life up to now as an empowered game changer in the village. And it's in the village in Mahmoodnagar district in Andhra Pradesh, now Telangana in India. So I say from the very start, as 2014 is the year of gender at ICRISAT, is such just appropriate occasion to launch our gender forum this year. And we, on behalf of the DG, we invite you to be part of it. So with gender research across cutting theme, across all research activities, we understand how it affects the dimensions of development, how it lends depth and meaning to our work here in the SAT region of the world. And these innovations will be spearheaded with the help of 3 gender specialists across the regions. At the present, we already have Wenda Bauspies, based in Western Central Africa, concentrating on CRP dried cereals. I think she has just landed in Niamey, or in Bamako, along with Esther Juguna, based in Nairobi, with a focus on CRP grain legumes. She also just landed this morning in Nairobi. Hopefully they are on KSIConnect. We will register this because the team in Western Central Africa, led by Ramajit Tabo, and the team in Eastern Southern Africa, led by Moses Yambi, are all partaking in this through KSIConnect. And third, let me not forget, especially the one who really spearheaded this work in Asia, is our Padmaja, based here in Patancheru, focusing on gender-related activities in CRP film. And along with, let me not forget to introduce Abhishek Bose, who is working on CRPs, both in green legumes and dry nut cereals, as gender, in strategic gender research. Now, As I said, we plan to have this forum organized in a monthly schedule. You will get the schedule, the MG and the RC already knows this schedule. It will be on rotation in Asia, then ESA, or WCA, then ESA. With this renewed focus on integrating gender dimensions, it is serious that in agricultural research we understand, and we will learn, if we don't yet know, that gender does not refer only to women or to women's issues, but rather on the power relations between men and women in agriculture. And this power we want to harness in our research here in the Semi-Arid tropics of ICRISAT. And to achieve inclusive growth of IMOD in development, not only in production, but also in benefiting and sharing the benefits and rewards from agriculture, we need to undertake concrete ways of enhancing women's decision-making and their visibility in this development process. And as the DG would indicate, this transformation is already happening at ICRISAT. He will describe that in his inspirational talk. So that this forum is now envisioned to really look at it as an institute-wide, across-program, across-region integration as we undertake strategic gender research at ICRISAT. So, just to end, my welcome to all of you and to all those who are in West and Central Africa and Eastern Southern Africa, not only in Nairobi and Bamako, but in all our locations as we are connected by KSIConnect. I hope that this forum will provide a much needed space for all across disciplines and across regions. And that I would like to reiterate that if we are successful today, let's make it successful in the next months and years, so that the future of the ICRISAT Gender Forum, because the strength of the ICRISAT Gender Forum really depends on your participation and continuing engagement. It's in this spirit that I encourage you for us to all own it and make it success. So with that, I would like to welcome, in our program, you will see that the DG who has continued to inspire us and who really thought about this as an initiative that will not have to happen only in very specific projects, but all across all projects, all across all CRPs, and all across scientists, disciplines, and regions. I'd like to invite our Director General for his inspirational message and formal launch of the ICRISAT Gender Forum. Dr. Dar.
Thank you, Cynthia, for the very important introduction about this initiative, ICRISAT Gender Forum. This is a very important platform with which we can bring the whole institute as one in regard to work on gender research for development. It is then my privilege to formally launch the ICRISAT Gender Forum. And I believe our colleagues in Sub-Saharan Africa are hooked up to this important launching of this initiative. And as you all know, 2014 is the year of gender at ICRISAT. And with gender research being a cross-cutting theme across all research activities, there is a critical dimension. Okay, let me use my specs. I'm not getting younger. I was mentioning that there is a critical requirement for all of us as scientists, researchers, and change makers to understand how this affects other dimensions of development in our research, and more importantly, to see how best we can incorporate such aspects to lend depth and meaning to our work in the semi-arid regions of the world. Let me mention that the Institute leads in 2 CRPs. These are the CRPs on grain legumes and dryland cereals. And we have very outstanding leaders in these 2 CRPs. Noel Ellis for grain legumes and Shubha Sivasankar for dryland cereals. And their leadership will bring us to a higher level of engagement with various partners, not only within the CG system, but the rest of the stakeholdership, including that of the South and of the North. And the whole Institute is behind them for them to really have that leadership role in making it possible for these 2 CRPs to succeed under the leadership of ICRISAT. To update you on the progress we have made in getting a critical mass of scientists specializing on gender, we now have on board the WENDA Spice based in West and Central Africa, concentrating on CRP dryland cereals, Easter and Juguna based in Eastern Southern Africa with a major focus on CRP grain legumes, and R. Padmaja based in Patanchero, focusing on gender-related activities in the whole of Asia. The research activities of these 3 scientists will be under the overall guidance and supervision of Cynthia, the program director of MIT, but it is not just, again, just for MIT, but for the whole institute. This is one thing to highlight. Today, rural women are the focus and face of our work here at ICRISAT, as changing migration and employment trends have conflated categorizations of smallholder farmers and women involved in agriculture. It is well known that of the approximately 2 billion smallholder farmers who reside in developing countries are responsible for producing bulk of the world's food. A majority are women, and they continue to live in extreme poverty. Many of them are involved in subsistence agriculture and are severely disadvantaged by normative restrictions translating into lack of access to land ownership, to agricultural inputs, and extension services in general. Evidence shows that even though women make up a substantial proportion of the rural labor force the world over, they are often the last to benefit from regional economic development. This association has negative implications not only for women's empowerment, but also for important human development indicators such as adult and child nutrition, morbidity, and health in general. Accordingly, the past 7 years have seen a renewed focus on integrating gender dimensions in agricultural research to make smallholder farming sustainable and more resilient. Today, in fact, women in rural communities are increasingly being seen as potential community change agents or change makers, and women-centric programs in turn as conduits for more effective disruptions in conservative societies where unequal power relations and gender imbalances exist. About last week, I had a chance to visit Gujarat, and this is with the invitation of the self-employed women in agriculture, SEWA. And for those who don't know SEWA, SEWA again are all women farmers 1.95 million in membership in 12 states of India and other countries to include sub-Saharan Africa. And this is where you can see what I was saying, that they're becoming change agents and change makers themselves. You can see women who are driving the tractor servicing the requirements of the smallholder farmers. You can see farmers, women farmers, as master trainers in discussing new options or varied options in smallholder farming. So they have taken the world, so to speak. And this is a good development. And if there is one thing we need to do in terms of this SEWA in place for us, if there are things that we can upscale, I would suggest and recommend to you, those working here in Asia, to really touch base with these very organized women that have been in existence as long as old as ICRISAT, 42-year-old Association of Self-Employed Women in Agriculture. To achieve inclusive growth and development, agricultural innovations, whether they be crop improvement programs or natural resource management, have to factor in how to integrate women equitably, not only in production and marketing functions, but also in sharing of benefits and rewards from agriculture. More importantly, we must arrive at concrete ways of enhancing women's decision-making and visibility as integral to achieving such holistic development. It is in this context that we at ICRISAT are now propagating a shift from a gender-sensitive approach to a gender-transformative approach, which involves an integration of gender and social dimensions into our research. The monthly gender forum, which we are now institutionalizing, in addition to our recently released ICRISAT gender strategy, is another positive step in this transformative direction. The forum has been envisioned with the primary objective of successfully implementing an institute-wide approach program and a cross-regional integration of gender strategy into ongoing research at ICRISAT. We hope that this forum will provide a much-needed space to consolidate disparate efforts and encourage enhanced interactions among specialists and scientists across disciplines and geographies. The future of this forum strongly depends on your participation and engagement, and it is in this spirit that I encourage you, all of you, here in Asia and in sub-Saharan Africa, to own it and make it a success. Thank you, and good day.
Thank you, Willie, for that wonderful inspirational talk. And formally, we're launching the ICRISAT Gender Forum this afternoon. And with that, we would like to follow this up with an inspirational, stimulating talk from our CRP directors. They will be talking about integrating consortium-level platform gender ideals and CRPs. And we'll start with Shiva Shankar, who will be talking about CRP drawing materials. Shiva, we're ready to show it through presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see a really beautiful auditorium here in celebration of the first day of the monthly Gender Forum series, which has been quite a visionary leadership thing from the DG, and it's spearheaded by Cynthia to just start launching it off in the Year of the Women. 26 May 2014 is a special day in more ways than one, and I won't say anything more than that, but it is good to have this as the first day of the Women's Forum at ICRISAT. I've been chartered to stand in for Wenda Watchpiece. She is the gender research leader for dryland cereals, and she's based in Bamako, Mali. And on her behalf, I'm giving a brief update of the gender research activities that are happening within the dryland cereals program. The gender research activities within this program started with the development of a strategy that was done within Cynthia's group by Chanda Goodrich, who's not here anymore, together with Padmaja. And that is a strategy that is being implemented by Wenda. Now, if you look at dryland cereals, especially the crops sorghum and millets in Africa, they are called women's crops. And there's a reason for that. These are actually women's crops, mostly grown by women, smallholder agriculturists, in areas that are impoverished, degraded land that's not cultivated by men, because most of the better lands go preferentially to the women. Preferentially to the men would have been good the other way around, but they go preferentially to the men. So it is the lesser optimized land or the degraded land that goes towards the cultivation of sorghum and millets in Africa. The program, Dryland Cereals CGIAR Research Program, addresses all aspects of the value chain for dryland cereals to take the agriculturists, the smallholder agriculturists involved on this platform, all the way from subsistence to market-oriented agriculture as much as possible. So that's what we see in this diagram here. There is breeding, biotechnology, integrated crop management, seed systems, post-harvest processing, and output markets involved. There is an impact pathway that has been developed for the gender strategy for dryland cereals, and it's pretty much the same as most of the other programs. The basic thing is that there is an overall gender strategy that lays the foundation for the research, the data collection that needs to happen in order to take gender dimension forward within the program. And that is the basis of the CGR gender strategy across the board. To some extent, that will be different across some of the CRPs, but the differences between the CRPs come in actual research for development activities that go towards gender disaggregated agricultural practices that is specific to a CRP or for a crop. So there's a combination of these two. Wenda, for her part, will be responsible, Wenda and Esther for the other CRP, and Padmaja here, will be responsible for the overall gender strategy of the CRPs and the different programs. Now, the actual gender research R4D implementation within each of these programs will be resident upon responsibilities of the PIs, the program leaders who are implementing the research. Ultimately, this is all going to be leading towards the system level outcomes of the CG. Now, I have one slide which outlines the gender research staffing for the CRP as we have proposed for the to the consortium office. At this time, there are 4 proposed positions that came with the approved proposal. Now, we have Wenda already in position as a senior research scientist for this program. And And then we have a scientific officer who will be shared together with Green Legumes, yet to be hired. And we also have Abhishek Bose contributing towards gender research activities of the 2 CRP. There is an ICADA position that we have also proposed, and we need to be looking into that. And the principal scientist here is in the refilling position, and I understand that is Chanda's position that's going to be refilled. So these would be contributory positions towards the CRP, as I understand it at this time, but this time we'll be going quite a bit to CRP dry land cereals. And just to put up this very briefly, and this is actually more written out representation of that first diagram with the circular diagram of integration that you saw before. It involves the various activities of the CRP. It includes data collection and disaggregation, knowledge and communication, development of improved varieties and hybrids, integrated crop management, seed systems, and output markets. In each of these, there is a relevant aspect of gender research, gender disaggregated data, and also the implementation of the research towards these different activities. And this is where I would say, or I would really plead to the scientists, the principal scientists, leaders of each of these programs, each of these product lines to contribute to, in collaboration with the gender scientists who are on board, who would not be able to accomplish all of this, but at the same time, we have a 10% budget on our CRP at each product line level that is directed towards these activities. So this is where I really would encourage you, plead with you to make sure that we have those activities covered and implemented. And with that, I think that's basically all I have. Thank you very much. And again, I'm really grateful for the DG's visionary idea of having a gender research forum. And somehow it coincided with this May 26, 2014, which in actual case is my 55th birthday. Thank you. Happy birthday, Showa. And I think that's why the DG particularly chose May 26. And it's an auspicious day, and when there was some possibility or some reasons raised by other members of the community that they'll not be able to make it, we were trying to change it, but the DG said, we'll proceed on May 26. I didn't know it's Shoba's birthday, so happy birthday again. All right. We'll also hear that we've heard the stimulating talk from Shoba. We'll also hear same stimulating talk from Noel Ellis. Noel, all our stakeholders in Eastern Southern Africa and Western Central Africa are also listening, so please address them as well, as we are all here in Asia. Noel?
No, my birthday is on a different day. I used to have an official one. Okay, so I'd like to say thank you to Cynthia for giving me this chance to speak to you, but actually I think that's probably a little bit inappropriate. It's rather scary to stand here and talk about a subject that I have no specialist knowledge in. So I think perhaps I should begin by confessing that I used to think that gender was a curious thing in some languages other than English, to do with how you have to learn extra things about how you make sentences, or alternatively it was about sex. And I think that since then I've realized that in the context of social sciences it means something rather more important, and has been extended to talk about essentially disproportionate power relations between individuals. Often these are between men and women, but not necessarily. They can be between women or they can be between men.
as well as between men and women. But we tend to focus on women because they are typically the subject of these disproportionate power relations. Okay, so I'm very grateful to Esther and Juga for providing me with a few slides which will help me to make some hopefully sensible comments to you. I confess to having added one slide which I hope Esther won't object to. So the first thing is to say is that we have what are called the common intermediate development outcomes. This is really what all of the CRPs are aiming to achieve. And there's been a lot of discussion about these, such that a group of such objectives have been identified across all of the CRPs. And personally, I must say I find this rather difficult because it seems to me that they're quite remote because they're shared between CRPs. So if the ideals for PIM, for example, are the same as the ideals for grain legumes or human tropics, then there must be something quite general about them. So it's quite difficult to be specific about how the CRP is addressing them. And I think in Shoba's talk, she emphasised the need for an impact pathway. So that's really understanding how what you're doing within the CRP relates to these objectives and what the specific measures at various steps along that pathway are. And within the grain legumes CRP, we're in the process of trying to establish those impact pathways by each of our output targets. And of course, there are these other sorts of reporting activities. The annual report, where we have to declare what activities we have undertaken with respect to gender. And there has recently been produced what's called a CRP portfolio report, which is a summary of how all of the CRPs are progressing with respect to various objectives, including gender. I noticed that within the report, there was a sort of summary table which was called the traffic light scheme as to how you're getting on. And this was on the red-green scale. As everyone knows, this is a gender issue in itself, and that you shouldn't use a red-green scale because of the gender-specific difference in red-green colour blindness. Okay, so what IDO's grain legumes signed up for, we had to select what we thought our main targets were. And again, I have to say I find this a little bit confusing because these objectives are not independent variables. If you contribute to one, you will also contribute to another. And you can see that they're fairly obvious: food security, income for smallholder farmers, nutrition and health because of the value of grain legumes in diet, productivity, which is actually the main bulk of our endeavours are addressed at productivity, and the environmental component of legumes, because of course they contribute to soil fertility. Now, one of the points that Esther has raised is that we don't have an IDO in relation to gender and empowerment, and I think there isn't one, if I remember correctly. But am I right about that, Shoba? There is one. Okay, so although gender and empowerment are components of all of these different activities, we haven't signed up to that as a specific target. So maybe we need to rethink that. So again, with regard to the integration of gender in the CRP and grain legumes, as I say, we have these impact pathways which are connected to what are called the theory of change. That's to say, the identification of those critical steps that lead to changes in activities with respect to whatever it is we're trying to achieve, including these gender-specific activities. So there is this other objective which we were discussing greatly last year in relation to mainstream gender and sex disaggregation in the data that we collect. So when we collect survey data on populations, that's an important component. And then the gender research is in two sorts of hierarchies. One is the sort of global or CRP as a whole activities. And to a large degree, that's what Esther and Wenda are concerned with in the CRPs. But of course, there is also the strategic gender questions at the CRP level. That's to say, research activities which have some gender component. And again, that's quite an important concept for researchers to take on. And again, Esther and Wenda are charged with trying to help us to understand these activities. So these are the two levels of research activity that relate to gender. But in Green Legumes, we also identify structural aspects of gender which are important. And that's particularly obvious to us because, for example, in our research management committee, we don't have any women, so it's very gender biased. So this is the slide that I inserted, and I thought it was an interesting quote from Jim Watson in his book on the double helix, and referred, of course, to the seminal work of Rosalind Franklin, who obtained the data on which the solution to the structure of DNA is dependent. I think it emphasizes several points that are really important in the CRP and Green Legumes. One is the gender issue that we're talking about. One is about open access to data, and the other is sharing data with proper attribution. All of which I think are major problems that we have to address. So, as Wenda says, she's just finished some work on the gender norms, and initiating some further discussions in that area. And she is, again, referring to this traffic light approach, which is to do a gender survey among the PLC's product line coordinators, to try and identify how well the gender-specific activities have been integrated into those research projects. And as I said earlier, she's responsible for the strategic research questions within the CRP as a whole, whereas the product line coordinators are responsible for these specific gender activities. So, for example, that means things like understanding what the role of developing chickpeas for mechanical harvesting has with respect to men or women, and other such activities. They pervade the research agenda. So with that, I'd just like to say thanks and apologise for my lack of specialist knowledge in this area, but I hope I haven't done an injustice to what Esther wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Noel. So we've heard messages reflecting dryland cereals from West and Central Africa through Shoba, from East and Southern Africa for Green Legumes through Noel. And now we will hear from our Padmaja, Reflections from Asia on Integrating Gender Research. Padma?
Good afternoon, one and all. I take this opportunity to thank each one of us present here today, either physically or virtually through the KSIConnect, for participating in today's program, the launch of the ICRISAT Gender Forum. Noel has already said this in his presentation, but then I'd just like to reiterate that we are all well aware that each CRP has been asked by the consortium to include indicators with targets for the level, form, and intermediate development outcomes, or the IDOs. So one of these IDOs is explicitly looking at women, gender, and empowerment. And this IDO has been designed to track the contribution of the CRPs to changes in women's empowerment, which the improvements or the enhancements in empowerment of men and women in particular will lead to bring about better outcomes. The better outcomes could be in terms of better nutritional outcomes. It could be contributions to poverty reduction. It could be health, research, health, or it could be sustainable resource use. Again, as Noel and Shobha has already said, the CGF Gender and Agricultural Research Network understands that CRP gender specialists will contribute to the identification as well as definition of the indicators and the targets for these common ideals, and here in particular the ideal related to gender and empowerment. Now to this end, the Gender Research Network is actually, we are already in the process of sharing knowledge towards identification of a few common gender indicators, which are of broad relevance to all the CRPs. And to give you a quick update, a workshop was held on May 19th and 20th at Cali, Colombia, with the objective of developing an agreed proposal to the consortium on the different gender indicators for the common gender and empowerment ideal. So Wenda and Esther, my two colleagues, have participated in this workshop, and they will guide us in this process during the subsequent sessions of the Gender Forum, and how we will be able to actually track the progress of our work in the CRPs, dryland cereals, grain legumes, and the other CRPs where we are participating centers, so that we can monitor and track the progress we have made in achieving this outcome. So I am here to give you a little update on the approach that we have taken in the CRP PIN, that is the Policies, Institutions and Markets CRP, where ICRISAT is one of the importantly participating centers. Now before I actually go on into how we are contributing to the gender strategy and the gender and empowerment ideas, I would like to mention about the ICRISAT Gender Research Strategy that has already been approved by our management for implementation by all of us. So the DG has already alluded to this topic, but I would just like to mention that the ICRISAT GRS is not just an approach for tracking gender research or a strategy for gender research, but can also be an approach for the IMOD framework. And not just that, it also outlines a transformative approach for the poor rural women and men, smallholders, to overcome the hurdles they face in the SAT. These are quite unique hurdles they face in the SAT, and if we are able to bring about that approach, to bring about that transformation, then we will help in securing the future of food production and economic growth. Now here I would just like to give you a little bit of a history, saying that ICRISAT was one of the first of the 16 CGR centers to include a gender perspective in its research way back in the early 90s. And now we have progressed from integrating a perspective to bring about a transformative change. So our approach is from integration to bringing about transformation. Now let me just elucidate the PIN's gender strategy and how we are integrating gender in most, if not all, of the PIN or the MEP research. Now the theory of change that guides the PIN gender strategy is very much similar to that of the PIN's CRP. So the premise, or the basic premise, is that policy-oriented research achieves impact through creating and applying new tools and methods to bolster the capacity of the research communities, and thereby providing evidence-based options for participants in policy processes at multiple levels. So the current portfolio of PIN therefore emphasizes development of tools and methods and data sets to provide a strong foundation for gender disaggregated research. So the PIN gender strategy is twofold. It is to create and apply new tools and methods to clarify how gender enters in pursuit of reduced rural poverty, improved food security, better nutrition and health, and stewardship of natural resources. And the second strategy is to make issues related to gender explicit in evidence-based options for participants in policy processes. Now, like other CRPs, even CRP PIN is involved in strategic gender research as well as application of some of the tools and the methods that have been developed by the PIM research to be used by not just the PIM research, other researchers, but also these could be applied for CRPs, grain legume and dryland cereals in particular. So the strategic gender research at PIM, in which I am mostly involved, is the study on gender and nutrition. And this study actually looks at how empowerment of women and men can lead to better nutritional outcomes. This falls under the umbrella project of the BPSA, and it offers a unique opportunity to examine the changes that have happened over time across the different production systems in different policy regimes. So you have a temporal dimension as well as a spatial dimension to examine the changes, and thereby we can see what works, what doesn't work, and either whether it works or not works, why does it happen so. So the existing panel data for the 6 villages has now been enhanced with adding nutrition data or the nutrition dimension, as well as collecting data towards measuring the empowerment indicators. So this micro-level database or the evidence base that is being generated helps us to show how the empowerment pathway can be used to analyze opportunities as well as gaps that exist towards improving both agricultural livelihoods and nutrition outcomes. So just to get, since the talk was just talk about the gender and empowerment ideas, I would like to give you just a listing of few of the indicators to measure empowerment. And this would include changes in men's and women's role in both productive and reproductive work, access to and control over resources, assets and income. We could look at the balance of power in intra-household decision making, about the use of inputs or either the strategies or the investment choices that are being made in the households. You could also look at the intra-household division of labor across varied crops, across livestock enterprises, across other NRM activities, and this is an indicator of empowerment. Looking at participation of men and women in agriculture, farm, non-farm, off-farm, homestead activities, the roles and decision-making capacity in collective organizations, both for agriculture and NRM-related activities, as well as the political empowerment, that is the mobility and participation in the public sphere. So these are just some of the indicators for which we are already collecting data, and these indicators will help us to measure empowerment and how enhancements or improvements in empowerment can lead to better nutritional outcomes. So we have the nutrition dimension also added to this activity. Now very quickly to tell you about how we are integrating gender in the other PIM activities. So as Shobha and Noel mentioned, it is the project investigators or the principal investigators who are taking this initiative and integrating gender, applying the tools and the methods that have been developed or that has come out of the strategic research. For example, in foresight modeling, we have Nedu and team who would actually now collect gender disaggregated data for different countries on food consumption, number of hungry persons, gender disaggregated data on malnutrition persons, etc. And this data will be used to project and calibrate the proportion of the gender disaggregate the population in different regions, and can also analyze per capita consumption level under different economic and environmental conditions. So this is an example of how we are integrating gender in the foresight modeling. A second flagship in which we are integrating gender is the technology adoption and sustainable identification flagship of PIM, where we are looking at the role of women in adoption of improved varieties, looking at not only varieties but also hybrids of dryland cereals and the varieties of legumes. So we are looking at specifically what is the role of women in the spread of the improved cultivars and as well as in sustainable intensification and increasing crop productivity. Another example is our work on social protection, where we are collecting data disaggregated data on the rural labor market, farm, non-farm activities, and also looking at the social protection program, analyzing the impact by gender of the social protection program, specifically the NREGA program or the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act is a key aspect of this work. And last but not the least, our work on markets and value chains. Again, we have activity leaders, Jupiter based in WCA, as well as Kai, Lister, and the team here in Asia with Uttam, who are also looking at how we can bring about, who are integrating gender in their different works. And specifically on the value chains, I would just like to add, we're looking at the measurement of inclusiveness, which will explicitly address the position of women in the value chain through the development of an index. So with this, I would like to thank one and all for giving me this opportunity to talk to you and tell you about the progress we have made in film with a special focus on gender. And let me tell you that empowerment is a word used by all, but then when we come to introduce the film, I would just like to say two more things about empowerment, but I would like to stop now. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you very much, Padma. That presents a background of a screening, a very important film, documentary that was produced in a multidisciplinary team with huge contributions from all sectors, and I'd like to attribute this to them. Of course, the one who wrote the script went to the village and filmed it with the crew as Padma, together with the team, and myself, but with the great contribution of Joanna and Tina, who also went to the villages during the filming process. So we are now screening, if we can now screen, the documentary on gender entitled A Day in a Life. And as I said, I would like to say that this one would be properly introduced, more properly introduced by the team. So I'd like them to all come here and Joanna to make a little explanation. Joanna and Padma and Tina, I saw you somewhere. Please come. And please prepare. So while Tina comes up.
Okay, first of all, happy birthday to Shobha. Happy launch of ICRISAT's Gender Forum and happy ICRISAT's International Year of Gender 2014. I'd just like to mention about an article that was last week in the Guardian in the UK. And it talked about how we tell our development stories. Now, we know success doesn't sell to the media, but success does sell to our donors. But the Guardian article talked about how organisations have gone too far in telling their success stories and not telling the whole story. So organisations are sometimes telling their story rather than telling the story about the people who we serve and are there to help. We fail sometimes to educate the audience about the bigger issues and challenges around the story. So if we don't tell the broader story, then those people who we are trying to empower, instead we can undermine them. But I'm very, and that was the gist of the article in the Guardian. But I'm very happy and pleased to say that the video that you're about to see, the whole team put in a big effort around capturing the story of a woman farmer in the village and really trying to show her story and the realities around her life. So it really was about capturing her story and not just telling our story, that the two can come together. And that really also is what VLS is about, the village level studies. It's about providing that data, information and those stories about what's really happening on the ground and the whole social and cultural situation around it. So SMC are very proud to have been able to work with the VLS team, their professionalism, their commitment, their dedication to what's really happening in the village and wanting to tell that story. We're really lucky also the VLS team were very creative and very keen to look for new ways to communicate those messages, and so we had a great opportunity to try something different. We also should thank Video Source, the video company, who we spent a lot of time in explaining to them what we were trying to display in the video, and that we wanted the true story to come out. So this video is about a woman farmer that Padma just selected, Yadama, who she was part of the VLS studies for 39 years. So she was there from the very, very beginning with her life being tracked and the understanding of what she's been through. So it makes it a particularly special story, I think. And so I think, yes, it's very, very lovely to have for ICRISAT's International Year Agenda to be able to show this story and to work together with the VLS team on that. Okay.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Joanna. So it's time to watch the film now. Let's give her a hand.